Predict, pick, and prevail in your fantasy football leagues with Nick Giacobbe and Nick Cap. From breakouts to busts, superstars to sleepers, these are the guys that will help you achieve fantasy glory. This is the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Week 11 and welcome to the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast, where we give you our predictions, our picks, with the hopes that we hope you prevail today in Week 11 and the rest of the 2023 fantasy football season. I'm your host, Nick Giacobbe. Joining me is Nick Cap, who's not only my co-host this week, but he's my opponent. Me and Nick are competing for a top seed in our fantasy league. Right now, Nick is in, I think, 4th place, and I'm in 3rd place in terms of standings, but we're all very close to those top 2 seeds. And Nick is first in points and has been the entirety of the season. I think he leads me by about 60 points, and we do go to week, let's see, this 18 weeks. We go to week 17 with the points, so there's still time for people to catch up on him. So I'm trailing him in that, and I do have a game on him in the standings. So pretty important game, I think. And pretty important fantasy week, I think, for the majority of owners that are, within the playoff race.
Correct. This is a big week. A lot of people also have some big stars going on by in the next couple of weeks. So yeah,
I wonder who has that.
Yeah, I know somebody has 2 of their top players. I think they're 2nd and 3rd or 4th round pick on by against me, which is unfortunate. And someone did just land a massive trade to get Josh Jacobs in their starting lineup for this week. So. But yeah, massive fantasy week. Of course, every week is massive, but the closer you get to those playoffs, the more important it gets. And we got some very good games this week, so I know Nick and I are looking forward to preview them.
Did you make a trade for Jacobs? I didn't even see that.
Yes, I did.
Did it process through already?
Yep. He's
and Vito, I didn't look. So you got Jacobs and Kelly for Madison, Warren, and Michael Thomas, and I guess Warren's a keeper.
Yep.
As well.
Technically, Michael Thomas, but no one's keeping him.
As somebody who's competing with you, I don't like the trade. As an unbiased fantasy analyst, you made a good trade, and I would say you won it, but I'm not going to say it's an unfair trade. I mean, he's getting Madison, who's been kind of a starter, just not great. Warren, who's kind of ish a starter as well, and could be a keeper. And then Michael Thomas, who's Michael Thomas. So I guess you got that in right before 2 days ago. I don't check my I check it, but I don't check it like religiously per se. But anyway, so good trade for you. I'm upset that you made it this week. I mean, I would have preferred you waited. Well, I got the trade deadline, so you couldn't have waited. But I wish I just wish it didn't happen. Against me. Since I am already down Olave, and I'm down at least one other person. Jonathan Taylor. So not fun. But me and Nick will go head to head today. And yeah, we'll see how the rest of this season goes. But I am complaining about my buys, but that won't change the next 5-ish weeks for me. Might change my seeding come playoff time, but my team will still be my team. All right, so thank you guys for joining. It's 9:00 in the morning on a Sunday. We've been going live at 8:30 last few Sundays, but we're going to try to keep it at 9 going forward. Give us a little bit of extra sleep, especially Nick with his little baby over there. So we'll probably do 9 on Sundays for the live stream. If this is your first time joining us for a live, thank you so much. We have a live stream every single Sunday, 9:00 a.m. on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. If you want to ask us fantasy football questions, lineup questions, please do. All questions will be given to us through YouTube and Facebook. Twitter does not allow the questions to go to our screen, which is unfortunate, but so please go to our YouTube or Facebook if you do want to ask those questions, and we'll answer your questions for the entirety of the show, basically, while going through each game, giving you injury previews, game by game, start sits, etc. So if you're watching the video live right now and you're on Facebook or YouTube, please drop a like, share that link with your friends. If you are on YouTube, you can hit that subscribe button to make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Hit the little bell icon to get notifications every single time we go live or post a new video. You can find our weekly show every week on all audio streaming platforms, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, and Anchor. You usually drop on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, something like that. If you're on iTunes or Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. It really does help us out, so thank you for doing that. If you'd rather watch and listen to our weekly episodes that drop, you go to our YouTube channel, PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. Just like I just said, subscribe, hit the little bell icon to get notifications, and share those links with your friends and fellow league mates. If you would like to interact with us and follow us on social media, please do. PrimeTimeFFPod, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube is Primetime Fantasy Podcast. If you do miss our live show or have any other questions throughout the week, Twitter is the best and easiest way to reach us. So you could send us tweets and stuff through Twitter. Okay, I'm going to get to a game-by-game preview now. And if you have any questions, please let us know throughout the show, and we will answer them. So first game that we're looking at right here is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Cleveland Browns. The big injury news, I guess, for this one's that Sean Watson was placed on IR. He's going to have shoulder surgery. So what's his first name? Not Demarius Thompson Robinson. No, it's Darius, right? Yeah, so the Browns will be starting DTR, rookie quarterback, and I believe they're bringing in Joe Flacco for a tryout as well. But today it's going to be the DTR show. So their offense will now be DTR, Jerome Ford, Amari Cooper, David Njoku, Elijah Moore. That's their offense against, and that's a pretty stout Steelers defense. So another injury here is that Pat Freiermuth. Let's see. Pat Freiermuth is on the IR. He returned to practice, and the team did activate him off the IR with his hamstring injury. So Freiermuth will be returning today. It is Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Okay, so let's get to our questions first. We have one question here. Then I'll go into that preview. So you know who Caldwell, a weekly listener. Always appreciate you. Good morning, fellas. What's your thoughts on Achane? Did I say that right?
Yep.
Coming back. How do we feel about Geno this week? So why don't we start with Achane, Nick? Your thoughts on him coming back? I'm not sure if you have him in a league or two.
I traded him away in all of my leagues, but I'm very confident in him. He was averaging 29 fantasy points per game before the injury. Of course, that's an outlier. Of course, he's not going to average 29 the rest of the season. But it proved that very quickly that they trusted him. He was explosive. It does worry me for Raheem Mostert, which is why I did want to complete that Jacobs trade in our league that we talked about earlier. On top of that, I mean, the Miami Dolphins have been the most explosive offense in all of football. According to PFF, they're the number one passing and rushing offense on the entire season. So they've been very effective in both. And this week they're going up against the Raiders, where they're 13.5-point favorites. So if they're expecting the Dolphins to be up early, expect them to rest most, or expect Achane to be out there getting the workload, getting the touches, and kind of carrying that team to a victory.
I like Achane rest of season. I'm not sure about the today. I do have him going in a league where my running back 2 has kind of been Kyron and Achane until they both got hurt. So I'm not really sure what to expect from him today. I'm really not expecting much, but I think down the stretch, I think he'll be very productive as long as the injury is not going to riddle him too much. How do we feel about Geno this week? I don't like Geno this week. The Rams have been a thorn in the Seahawks side really forever in the Pete Carroll era, whether it was Fisher or Jeff Fisher or Sean McVay. So they've always had a pretty stout defense. They've always been just one of those annoying teams to have to deal with. And I think there's going to be no difference today. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on the Seahawks offensive line. And although Geno's been pretty solid these last 3 or 4 weeks, besides that Ravens game, I worry about him against the Rams. So I would need to know who your other quarterback is to see if, you would start him over Geno, but I'm not pumping my fist about having Geno in my starting lineup this week.
I agree. I think the Rams have the game plan on Geno. Week 1, they blew him out. I think you'll get a little bit come back to reality from the Rams, but you're also getting Cooper Kupp back in, who was not there. So
we're getting Stafford back, really. So Cooper Kupp wasn't there for the Seahawks game.
Correct.
So
you're
I just want to reiterate that he wasn't hurt last week.
Correct. So you're going to be getting a team that just blew them out. And if they blow them out, there is upside for the game script. But for me, I'm not really jumping for joy over Geno anymore.
He says his only pivot for Geno is Kenny Pickett or Bryce Young. I think I'd rather just stick with Geno. Kenny Pickett, I think I could consider, swerving to Kenny Pickett in certain matchups, but we'll talk about it right now. We could just go into it. Steelers are facing the Browns, and this is going to be in my opinion, Nick, it'll be a low scoring game. I don't know what the over under is, but 2 really good defenses, 2 pretty not so good offenses. I think it'll be low scoring. I think it'll be gritty. I think it's almost like a Big Ten college football matchup. I think it'll be decided by a field goal. So I don't think there's a fantasy friendly game. I'm not sure who I want to play from this game. I guess depending on your running back situation, you might be playing Jerome Ford or one of the Steelers running backs. I personally don't want to play Amari Cooper. On the Steelers side of things, if you have a pivot for either receiver, I'd probably go with a different pivot. I'm just not really pumped to play any offensive fantasy player in this game, but I might consider playing like both defenses, honestly.
Yes, I would play both defenses. You know, I love the over-unders, even though I've never bet on a sports game in my life. The over-under for this game is the second lowest in a football game that it's been over the last decade.
Wow.
It is at 32.5. The only game lower was last year, Browns, New Orleans Saints. So you're really talking about two teams where they are expecting a defensive matchup. That division has been all defensive matchups. Pretty much every game has been the under outside of the Bengals and the Ravens last week. This week, I guess. On
what about the
Thursday.
Browns and the Ravens? I had to hit the over last week.
No, I just said outside of that. Oh, yeah, that one and then
Browns. Okay, gotcha.
Those are the two. Every other game in this division has pretty much been an under game. The Steelers have been an under team. The Steelers have been outgained in every single game this season. They're the only team in NFL history to have been outgained through this many weeks and be over 500. So the Steelers have been a massive outlier. They're not gaining yards. They're miraculously winning games. But for me, I would bench almost every single player in this game if I had the opportunity to, outside of defenses.
Yeah, and what me and Nick are saying is maybe you don't have the opportunity to bench a Najee / Jalen Warren or Jerome Ford. If running back's a very thin position, especially right now, so maybe you can't bench them. You can probably pivot off the receivers in this game, but it depends on who's on your bench. So I'm not saying it's the absolute worst in the world, but definitely consider it. From Jesus, who's with us every single week. Thank you for joining us again. Good morning, guys. Sit one in full PPR. Kenneth Walker, David Montgomery, David Achane, currently projected with 30-point advantage. Opponent had Burrow on Thursday. Yikes for him. My favorite play in this is Montgomery, and Nick, that's the next game that we're going to talk about on our list here. David Montgomery has a revenge game. He was very, very productive earlier in the season before he got the injury that put him on IR. And although Jahmyr Gibbs definitely looked like the number one last week, and that worried me as a Montgomery owner, Dan Campbell's a football guy. I think he definitely is going to want to get David Montgomery some carries against his former team. I could also see the Lions going up big, and if they go up big, maybe Montgomery gets the bulk of that work. I don't really know, but I think I really like Montgomery in this game. So that's between Kenneth Walker and Devon Achane. I can't. It's different. I think I'm going to lean Walker. I think he just finds a way into the end zone in most games more than not. That's their number one red zone, option. And if the Seahawks are going to win this game, they're going to have to play Seahawks football. They're going to have to run the ball. They're going to have to slow the game down. They can't let Geno stand in the pocket for 5 seconds because that's not going to work against these Rams. So I might be speaking more from a Seahawks fan and football perspective, but I think Walker is the better player. I know he's the running back one over there. And I think he has more red zone upside than Achane, who's coming off the injury. And I think if he wasn't coming off the injury, maybe if he was 2 or 3 weeks in, maybe I'd kind of swing differently. But I don't think the Dolphins are going to rush their rookie running back into a prominent role, knowing that they are going to be a playoff team. And they do have Mostert, who's very productive. So this week I would play Walker different, 2 or 3 weeks down the line, I might flip.
I would lean Achane number one on the list.
Interesting.
So total opposite of Nick. The metrics were the 3-week span. He didn't play week 1. Week 2, they put him on a limited snap count because he was coming off of an off-season injury. And then from week 3 on, let me actually pull this because it's kind of one of the craziest fantasy stats I've ever seen. Since week 3 through now, keep in mind, Achane has only played 3 games. He's the RB13 in that span because of how explosive he was in the 3 games where he got actual reps, and he wasn't even the RB1 in his first explosive game where he had 51 fantasy points. For me, there are very few players I would trust playing him, and in a spot where you're a 13-point favorite, the running back is always going to deliver. The one I would bench would probably be Montgomery based off the talent level. I do think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to overtake. And I do think Monty has a good week. I think he has probably the most touchdown upside of the 3 of them. But Kenneth Walker and Devon Achane, if you saw at the end of today, they combined for 300 yards on the ground, no one would be surprised. So for me, no, I don't think Montgomery's going to have plenty more of those 100-yard games. on this team with Jahmyr Gibbs stepping up into that role, it's really, for me, going to be Montgomery touchdown or bust for the rest of the season. And this is a good spot for him to get it with the comeback game where they're a touchdown favorite. But for me, Walker, Achane, two of the most explosive young running backs in the league.
So let's talk about it, because our next game we have up here is the Bears and the Lions. And let's talk about Montgomery a little bit. So I'm a Montgomery owner in 2 leagues. 1 league I'm dead on at this point because of Thursday Night Football. But our leagues, I'm a Montgomery owner. He's my running back 2. And I am worried. I'm worried that Jahmyr Gibbs is now the running back 1, but I just don't see them phasing out David Montgomery for the same reason why I drafted him. You follow the money. He signed a 3-year deal. He's only 26 years old, and he's been very productive when he's on the field this year. He hasn't really had a bad game when he's in the pads. Now, he has dealt with the injuries, so maybe they could say that Montgomery's a little more injury prone, but I still think he's going to get a good chunk of work. And I think the Lions are almost like a run-first team. So I'm curious to see what the usage is the rest of the season. I think Gibbs will be the running back 1, but I don't think this is not a 49er situation where it's a McCaffrey 80%, 20% other people. I think it's going to be more of like a 60% Gibbs, a 40% Montgomery. So I do understand your points, but respectfully, I do think Montgomery is going to have a big game again, a revenge game against his Chicago Bears, who he spent a lot of years with, and they didn't want to pay him. And I think it was a different coach. Maybe I feel slightly less differently, but Dan Campbell is
You want to run through a wall.
You want to run through a wall, and he is. If you watch South Park, he is Randy Marsh when he gets testicular cancer. Basically, the premise of the episode is he wants to get cancer for some stupid reason. I don't even remember, but his they grow very big, and he jumps around on them like you got some big balls. So that is kind of the Dan Campbell meme on Twitter every week. So. I could see him really using Montgomery today. Maybe I'm wrong, but in injury news in this game, Khalil Herbert is coming off the IR. Eberflus said that there's no running back 1 this week, so now we're bouncing between Khalil Herbert, Dante Foreman, and Roshan Johnson, who I think is dead in the water. And Justin Fields is also returning and will be the starting quarterback for the Bears. So, Nick, what are your thoughts on this game? Because the Lions defense just gave up a lot of points to the Chargers. I know the Chargers are a better offense, and we'll give up a lot of points to the Ravens. I can see the Lions winning this game, but I could also see it being close. But I don't see the Bears winning it all. That's not really where my head is at. But I think it could be a close game. But it just depends.
We always say Vegas knows, and they are a 7-point favorite today. At the beginning of the week when the Lions first came out, the Lions were a 10-point favorite. A lot of people came in on Chicago. A lot of smart people came in on Chicago, and they were forced to move the lines because too many people were pounding Chicago, because the general thought is that Chicago is going to keep this game a lot closer than people think. I do think the Bears, Justin Fields, 2 games before the injury looked very, very good. The running game there last year, they were the number 1 rushing team in the entire NFL. So there is a way that Justin Fields, Dante Foreman, and Khalil Herbert, all 3 of them have fantasy relevancy. I just don't want to find out by having any of them in my lineup this week. Justin Fields, of course, I'm good with. The other 2, I am more than happy to leave on the bench. Khalil Herbert, some teams probably desperate for him at this point of the season because of all the injuries at the running back position. But if you have the option to pivot, just do it, because it's not going to be a comfortable spot where you want to play Khalil Herbert, not knowing if it's going to be Dante Foreman or if it's going to be Khalil Herbert the rest of the way.
I would play, if I had to play one or the other, and I think I know somebody that has to play one or the other, I think I'd lean Dante Foreman. He's been very productive. I think he's had like over 80 yards in 3 straight games. The number could be wrong, but he's been productive. Yeah. He's also a much bigger back, so I think he has more touchdown upside than Khalil Herbert. I think Khalil Herbert could be more like a pass-catching back, but I think Dante Foreman is more of the running back for this team. I would cautiously play Justin Fields depending on your quarterback situation and who you have as a backup. You still drafted him high. He still is very productive. Still has a lot of rushing upside. And I would also, obviously, you're playing Amon-Ra, you're playing Gibbs, you're playing Montgomery. I think Jared Goff's a good play. And I think both tight ends are in play as well. And Cole Kmet and Sam Laporta are both in play for this game. Nick, can you please, if you're able to, pull that next question up or read it off at least? My Google Chrome is doing the same thing it did the other day, where it's giving me the spinning wheel.
Sure.
So pull up that question.
Few start sit. This is from Dylan Fink. Few start sit questions, full PPR. We'll start with the first one. Start one, flex, Hollywood Brown or Trey McBride.
Okay, so I'll give my opinion on this. Then I'm gonna have to close my Chrome and go back into it. Sorry, guys. This is not my issue. Trust me. So it's Marquise Brown or Trey McBride. I know that Trey had an awesome game last week with Kyler coming off, the injury, and I know that he's been a pretty solid tight end this year. I just can't flex tight end. So first off, I want to know who your tight end is. I'm guessing it's maybe like Kelsey or Laporta, something like that. So I'd love to know who your tight end is. And I would play Marquise Brown. I'm playing him in a league that I'm actually dead in, but it doesn't matter at this point. I'm still going to play. I think they're going to try to get Marquise Brown the ball. They did sign him to a contract in the offseason last season. He's Kyler Murray's number one without DeAndre Hopkins now. I think they're evaluating where their talent is on this team, but I think he's going to get, a good chunk of balls. I think it has to one of these games, and I think this could be the game where it happens.
I agree with that. Luckily for you, I don't believe. Let me just double check before I say something stupid. Oh no, they do have a 1:00 slot game. I was gonna say that you could see where your team is at if you need the explosiveness or if you need the consistency. Because the more consistent play is Trey McBride. I agree with Nick. I usually do like to go with the receiver or running back for your flex spot. But in this matchup and in this type of game and the consistency Trey McBride has had over the last few weeks, he's a guy that I do really like. I think he's got great upside moving forward. Like Nick said, drop your other tight end in here because we might actually tell you to pivot the tight end. But I would lean with Hollywood. I think you need explosion to win fantasy playoffs and championships. So Hollywood to me is the more explosive player. And I don't see Trey McBride putting up a 30, 35-point game. I would not be surprised if Hollywood could go get you a 40 bomb. Number 2 question. Start one running back, flex. Start one running back, one flex. Connor, Achane, Waddle. I'll pivot over to Nick for that one first.
Sure. Let's see. Who do the Cardinals have this week? I'm trying to remember off the top. Texans. I'm almost anti-Achane this week because I'm worried about the fact that Mostert's been really productive. The offense has been very productive, and he's coming off the injury, and I think they are going to be a little bit more lenient with the injury. And I could be totally wrong. So I always love starting a receiver in my flex. So I'm going to start Waddle. That Raiders defense is pretty stinky, and I think that Waddle's due for a big game. And as the running back, I'm going to go with Connor. Connor's been an awesome running back this season. He came off the injury last week, and he looked fine. I think they're going to have to run that ball to beat a Texans team who is playing very well. And I'm not sure what the Cardinals' blueprint is at this point. I'm not sure what they want to do, but I think they are testing to see how good their team really is now with their franchise quarterback back. So I don't think they're trying to lose games per se. I think Connor will still be very, very productive. Now, the only thing that does worry me is that the game script really favor the Dolphins and Achane. If the Dolphins do go up big on the Raiders, Achane could get more work. I think the Cardinals and Texans game will be closer and could be a really good game. But I'm gonna pivot over here to Connor, knowing he's the running back one, knowing that the only person that could steal his carries is Kyler. But I'm a little bit more worried about Mostert stealing carries on the other side rather than Kyler. I know Nick's gonna give you a different opinion, and that's okay. So listen to both of our opinions and then kind of choose. You go with your gut and choose whichever one you'd want to go with.
So I would say if this is the same league, I would not want to start Hollywood and Connor or McBride and Connor. I don't think the Cardinals are as explosive as other teams in the league. I do think that they're going to be better. I do think that they could sneakily upset the Texans in this spot. That would probably be my bold take of the week. That's
my bet of the week. I think they were like +7 or something like that. They were.
I think they're a very good chance to win this game and pull off an upset. The Texans coming off 2 major wins. They're
getting too much hype right now. I think the Cardinals are the better team with Kyler Murray.
I don't know if they're the better team, but I do think that they match up very well with the Texans with the mobility at quarterback, because that's not something the Texans have seen much of this year. For me, no matter what the case would be, I would still play Achane and Waddle. I do think Waddle is a lock, and Connor, there's no concern this week, but they did pick up Michael Carter from the Jets off of the waivers. So I do think next week there is a chance that he does seep into his workload a little bit.
I think you got to die on this Michael Carter hill, man. You love that guy.
The league loves him. When he was cut, so he didn't clear waivers. That doesn't typically happen.
No, I think he's a solid running back, but Connor's been productive. It doesn't worry me that they picked him up. I think every team wants to carry two solid running backs, but I don't think Connor's done anything to lose carries. And last question you have here: start one quarterback, one running back, one flex. Let's start with the quarterback: Stroud or Fields. You got to keep rolling with Stroud. I think both have pretty solid matchups, but Stroud hasn't let you down in a couple weeks. I think you just got to ride the hot hand on that one.
Yep.
And then one running back: James Conner, Jerome Ford, Singletary. I'm going with James Conner for the reasons I just kind of told you. Don't like the Jerome Ford matchup and don't like Singletary's matchup either. And one flex, I'm flexing Waddle.
Yeah, I think Waddle has been I know he hasn't had the explosive season, but he's been one of the more consistent receivers in fantasy football this year. I'm still very confident in starting him. I don't. I know that you have a couple questions with him in here. I would not worry. I would not try to pivot from him at this point of the year.
He also asked us if we see the Ravens still contending without Mark Andrews. Maybe we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I think they'll still be in the mix, but my money's still kind of on I think Casey's running the table through the AFC at this point. And I think the Bengals were their kryptonite, and they have proven that as much as Nick does not like the Bengals. I think that is their biggest hump every year. I would put your Kansas City Super Bowl contending bets in right now, if you can.
I would agree that it's most likely that they come out of the AFC. But I do think the Ravens have a good shot to still be good without Andrews. It's definitely a big loss, but we have seen in weeks where Andrews does not play, at least last year or 2 years ago, Isaiah Likely come in and be a solid tight end. I mean, it's very hard to replace a Mark Andrews, but he's not much of a pass blocker. He's only blocked on passing plays 5 times in his entire NFL career, which is absolutely nuts. So you're not really worried about him creating time for Lamar. Lamar creates time on his own. So as long as Likely's not dropping balls or running crisp routes, there will be a role for that tight end there. I do think Isaiah Likely will be on our waiver show on Tuesday.
I think so too.
You should definitely check that out.
I think so too. All right. Keep sending those questions in, guys. We'll keep answering them until the show's over. So from who Caldwell, would you play Addison over CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek, or Ayuk? Absolutely not. I mean, just to be honest here, CeeDee and Tyreek, there's nobody you play them over every single week. They're just locked in. I don't care who the quarterback is. I don't care who the matchup is. They are locked in every single week. And I would play Ayuk over Addison.
I agree. The 49ers are big favorites this week. Ayuk could have a good week. He has been very solid this year. He is the highest graded pass catcher out of PFF as well. So he's having a very good year, even as much as it's not translating to superstar fantasy games. He's been very consistent. And Addison, there's a very nice spot with Justin Jefferson not playing, but Patrick Surtain has been locked down this year since week 3. So that is not the matchup that I'd want for a young rookie receiver.
From Joe, will Dameon Pierce be fantasy relevant when he comes back from his injury? Maybe. I mean, Singletary's okay. I think it's just kind of a ride the hot hand situation, at least for me. I don't think it's a running back 1 or running back 2 situation.
I do think he assumes the RB1 role on the team when he gets back, and the Texans have, unfortunately for Pierce, the Texans have been on fire the last few weeks with a ton of touchdowns and a ton of red zone work. And he did not have an opportunity there. For Pierce's young 2-year career, or year and a season and a half, he has not gotten a lot of pass catching opportunity, and the Texans have been one of the lowest touchdown teams in the league. So, and he's really someone that was touchdown or bust all of last year, all of this year. So, I do think with the team being a little bit more explosive on the outside now, it does open up the game for Dameon Pierce. I do think if you need a mid running back or RB3 flex, he is a prime candidate to go trade for before your trade deadline.
And your trade deadline might be today, so this might be the last time to make your trade. So we have a trade here from Blurpay. Just got offered Pollard and Taysom Hill for McBride and Singletary. Do I take them? Other tight end will be Jake Ferguson. So Nick's going to give you his Taysom Hill spiel in a second, and he does make good points. But I am all in on Jake Ferguson and have been for the last few weeks. After coming off the bye, I believe he's had 12 or 14 plus fantasy points in 3 straight games. I think he's going to end up being I call him a league winner, because if you got him off of waivers and you needed a tight end, I think he's going to slot in really nicely. Now, I don't like having 2 Cowboys on your roster, and I don't like having 2 of any team on your roster. That's like a quarterback and receiver. But this one, I'm okay with it because I think Pollard is the better back than Singletary. He's on the better offense. And you know, so it'd be, I got over Pollard and Taysom Hill for McBride and Singletary. Okay. So you would get Taysom Hill and Pollard. I'm sorry. I misread that. I would definitely do that. You could play Taysom Hill, or Ferguson based on the matchups. Nick loves Taysom Hill. I love Jake Ferguson. So you're getting 2 guys that we both really like. I think Pollard's an upgrade over Singletary, better offense. And I know he's been disappointing, but I'm still a believer because the offense is going to score a lot of points, and they're going to have a lot of really important games down the stretch. So I would definitely do this.
Totally agree. I'd pull the trigger as well.
Cool. From Corey Jackson, Rondale Moore over Cade Otton in flex. Yes, I won't play tight ends in flex. That's a really good tight end. You'd have to give me a really good reason to. And there's a chance Cade Otton gets in the red zone, but with him, I think it's kind of touchdown or bust.
My question would be, who else is on your waiver wire? Or
yes, I would like to know that too. Your waiver wire and your bench, because I'm not in love with Rondale Moore.
If it's a 14-person, 16-person league, this is your guy. Then Rondale Moore, I agree.
From Daniel Kapskinen. Hey, fellas, need 1 wide receiver, 1 flex PPR. Calvin Ridley, Jordan Addison, Deontay Johnson, Tyler Lockett, Jerome Ford, or Jerick McKinnon. This is tough. We got a lot of tough matchups here. I think the one guy that I really like, and I'm a little biased here, is Tyler Lockett, because I don't think there's a corner that's going to cover him on that team. And the worry for me with Lockett is that the Seahawks should run the ball to avoid the pass rush. And if they don't run the ball, they are going to get a lot of pass rush, and the game could get out of hand in a bad way. But I think Lockett has the best matchup here in terms of receivers. I don't want to play Jerick McKinnon. He's just so much of a wild card. I just don't want to play him. So now we're left with Addison, who's going to get Patrick Surtain tonight. And although I do like that he's the wide receiver 1 over there, Surtain scares me a bit. Deontay Johnson's going to be facing Cleveland, who's been pretty tough on everything. And Ridley's going to get the Titans. The Titans defense is terrible. I kind of might want to take a chance on Ridley here, even if I've been anti-Ridley for most of the season.
I agree with Nick. I think I'd go Lockett. I think he's the number 1 guy that I'd really want in the spot. Truly unlucky, tough matchups and situations for the rest of this list. I would honestly say there's no one I would comfortably flex, but like Nick said, of all the matchups, of all the upside, it is Calvin Ridley.
I'll give you some other reasons for these guys. Jordan Addison, if Surtain's not following him, Addison should get moved around in that lineup and could have a good game. Jerome Ford, still the running back 1 over there in Cleveland, and they're going to want to take some pressure off of DTR. And Deontay Johnson is still kind of the wide receiver 1 with Pittsburgh, and could also gobble up some targets. So I know I just gave you good reasons for all of them besides McKinnon, but we did give you our opinion on who we would play. But I think you just got to kind of trust your gut and flip a coin. I hate to say that.
I'll give you a pro McKinnon one. McKinnon was phenomenal in the Super Bowl, and he was one of the reasons they were able to open up against the Phillies.
That's a good point.
Listen, all of them will have a case for them and a case against them. When I think about fantasy, I say, all right, if these games were to happen not once, but like 20, 30, 40 times, who do I think more often than not has the boom, who has the more consistent? And that's kind of how I try to.
So you're going with Lockett, and who's the other one you would go with if this is your lineup? Calvin Ridley. Okay. All right. I kind of don't like when we agree, so like differing opinions sometimes. Yeah. From Fat Golfer, in my flex, should I play Pollard versus Carolina or Lockett versus the Rams? Here I would go Pollard. I just think they have to get Pollard going at some point. They're a playoff team. They want to be a Super Bowl contender. I think they have to really try to get Pollard to go at some point. Maybe I'm just screaming to the heavens because I have him on a team. But Lockett, and we just spoke positively about him, but I do see negatives at Lockett. He is the wide receiver 2 on that team. They should be run first team against Carolina. And he's very boom or bust. So although I don't hate the Lockett play, I think Pollard's a guy you drafted high. He's on a higher scoring offense. The game could get out of hand, and I think he's just due. I think he really is due. And if at some point he just doesn't get his, then I'm wrong. But I just think he's too talented to not be due.
I agree with you. I think Pollard is the play here. He has not been the running back I thought he would be this
Nick,
year.
and the rest of the fantasy community. I don't think any.
Yeah.
I didn't see many takes that were anti-Pollard preseason.
Correct. The whole thought was he's the only running back there. He's going to be explosive. Mike McCarthy wants to change to more of a balanced offense where you run the ball as much as you pass it. So like everything was pointing to Tony Pollard should and could be the guy. And unfortunately, he has not been this year. But in spots like this, 10-point favorite, Carolina's weak defense, like it's a very good upside there. I would say I picked up Rico Dowdle in a league because his workload is starting to increase. I don't expect him to take over by the end of the year. But Mike McCarthy is a crafty coach that could switch up on us.
That'd be such a rat move. They literally just let Zeke go because of Pollard. I hate them.
And Zeke actually has not looked. I mean, he hasn't been great for fantasy.
Okay.
He has not been as bad as he was.
He's been okay. Caldwell says Ferguson has a good playoff schedule. That he does. League winner Jake Ferguson. Okay, from Mike Duke, pick 2 in standard. Ugh. Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, Tony Pollard, James Conner. So I'm looking for touchdown upside. I like Kenneth Walker's touchdown upside, so I'm going to go with Kenneth Walker. At this point, I actually won't plug Pollard in because he's been not really getting touchdowns, and he hasn't been catching a ton of balls either. So I think I would bench Pollard in this situation. I think I kind of want to play Breece Hall. I think the Jets need to rely on Breece Hall, but I'm worried about the Jets because I feel like the Bills really need a bounce back, but it is a tough matchup for them. But I think I would lean on Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker. I love talent, touchdown upside. I would rank them Walker, Breece, Connor, and Pollard.
Same, except by Pollard over Connor because it's in PPR. Connor's usually not going to be a 100-yard rusher. It's going to be 5 catches that gets you the week. I agree with Nick. Kenneth Walker is the one. Breece Hall, it's not an easy spot against Buffalo, but the Jets have matched up well against them for the last 2 seasons. I believe Zach Wilson is 2-1 against them in his career, which is kind of crazy. So you got a very good shot here, in my opinion, with Breece Hall. He has had over a 50-yard rush in over 40-yard rush in 4 of his games this year. Since week 5 when he took over as the RB1 and they really gave him the workload, he's averaging about 17 points per game. And I know we're talking about Michael Carter like we did earlier. They just let him go to open up more opportunity for Dalvin Cook and for Breece. So I would expect his workload to take a slight bump up in this game.
Now this is full PPR. Dante Foreman or Alexander Madison. You lean Madison?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd probably lean Madison too, since there's really nobody behind him. I know Foreman's going to be in a committee. I think the Vikings probably should lean on Madison a bit more to win this game between 2 teams that are pretty hot. I think the Vikings have won 5 in a row. I think Denver's won 3. So pretty important game for both teams in this playoff push. It's definitely not a sexy Sunday night game, but it's not. This is should be a competitive game at least.
I think this game is going to be a lot more fun than I would have thought 2 weeks ago. Which is a good which is good for my entertainment, not good for my Broncos take. But yeah, I agree with Nick. I would go with Madison here.
From Bryce Ridley, start 3 in PPR: Brian Robinson, David Montgomery, Aaron Jones, or Kenneth Walker, full PPR. So if you missed my Monty take at the beginning of the show, me and Nick are a little bit decisive on this one, but I like Monty a lot. I think he's a revenge game. I think he's going to get a lot of volume, so I would love to lock in Monty here. Second one, I'm locking Kenneth Walker. I just think that he has a lot of touchdown upside. And then we have really tricky ones. We have Aaron Jones against the Chargers defense, who's pitiful. And I feel like they need to lean on Aaron Jones to win this game, if they're going to try to at least. And then your Commanders have the Giants, who are just the worst team in the league. And Brian Robinson has been a very good fantasy back. So I really like this question. I know I'm just debating with myself at this point. Brian Robinson, the running back 4 on the that's standard. So what is he in PPR? In PPR, Brian Robinson is your running back 6. So I don't think you could bench him. I don't really want to bench Aaron Jones though. So this is tough. I'm going to think about this for a second. Nick, do you maybe have a formulated opinion? Because I'm stumped on this one. I think
so. I would say my number one here is Kenneth Walker. My number two is Brian Robinson. In this spot. I think the last time they played the Giants, he had close to a 30-point game.
I think I really am liking Brian Robinson more than I think about it. So let's lock in Brian Robinson and Kenneth Walker. And then it's between Monty or Aaron Jones. And
that's my debate. And I would go Aaron Jones. I don't love it. Listen, I agree with you. I think
I'm glad you're going Aaron Jones because I want an opinion out there for him because I think he's going to have a good game too. I wish you had a second flex spot. I'd say play all of them because I do like the matchups here.
I agree.
The matchup I like the least is actually Kenneth Walker because if the Seahawks get blown out, that's the matchup I like the least. But he's so talented. I mean, Walker's still he's the running back 7 on the season. I feel like you just can't bench him either.
I agree.
How is Bijan Robinson quietly the running back 9? How? Anyway, yeah, I'm sorry we're giving you differing opinions here, but you have really good matchups here. I think I'll just play who you have confidence in. From Lex, plant some trees. Perham, Conklin, or Freiermuth this week? I think I kind of want to go with Freiermuth.
I probably would, if it's PPR, I'd probably go Freiermuth. Conklin's not a bad one, though. I think he's been a little more solid and has gotten close to 100% snap share on this team now. So, but I agree with Nick. I would go with Freiermuth, but begrudgingly.
Yep. You're hoping for a touchdown. Whoever you start, you're hoping for a touchdown. That's the tight end play. Everett's out. They mentioned.
I'd still lean Freiermuth.
I don't know. They kind of like Parham. They kind of like him. I'm kind of more intrigued. I'm going to switch it. I'm going to switch mine to Parham because I think there's a higher chance of them scoring a touchdown than the Steelers. The Steelers may not score a touchdown. And if they do, they might score 1. I'm going to go with Parham. Nick's going to go with Freiermuth. So you have 2 options there. So there you go. All right. No questions at the moment, guys, but please keep asking those questions. We'll keep answering them until the show's done. Nick, do you have a heart out today? Or
nope, I'm good to go.
We're good to keep talking. We'll definitely get through an injury report of each game, and then the show will kind of end, but keep asking those questions while we're kind of going through each game. This ESPN link. Every week, this injury link does not like me. I love that we use it, but it does not like me. Okay. Chargers at the Packers. So here is Gerald Everett. He's out with a chest injury. Keenan Allen's questionable with a shoulder injury, but I think he's probably most likely going to play. I don't see a world where he doesn't. And those are your injuries. So, Nick, we've talked about this a little bit. I kind of do like Parham now, so I would play him. I would play Keenan Allen. Obviously, Herbert's going to get in there. Eckler's going to get in there. And then on the Packers side of things, I do like Aaron Jones because those Detroit Lions running backs just gobbled up so many yards against the Chargers. And that's the only Packer that I like. I'm very anti-Packer.
I do think the receivers have a good shot here for the Packers. The Chargers defense has been absolutely abysmal.
It has been.
I am sneakily rooting for the Packers as a not a resident Chargers fan, but as a Chargers supporter and lover, because I hope it gets Brandon Staley fired before the end of the season. That's the only reason. But I agree. I think Aaron Jones is.
Aren't you still a part owner?
I'm a shareholder. My first action was trading Aaron Rodgers to us. It hurt him from the inside out, obviously. It's funny. I actually am buying a frame for that later today.
That's awesome.
For my certificate.
That's so funny.
But as Nick said, Aaron Jones, I agree here. This is a very good spot for him. I do think the receivers can bounce back from Green Bay. I think Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs have their best matchups of the year so far. And on the Chargers side of the ball, we say it every week. You know your guys. You know you're starting Herbert. You know you're starting Eckler. You know you're starting Keenan Allen. You could debate the tight end. You could debate
Quentin Johnston's the only one you're debating.
And then you can debate Jalen Guyton. But for me, there's only 3 you lock in every week and flex the others or switch out if someone's on bye. Like that's how I'll always examine the Chargers.
Next game, the Raiders at the Dolphins. Devon Achane is going to return. We've spoken about him a lot on this show. That's the only injury news. I mean, for me, it's like you're playing Jacobs and Adams every single week. I think Jacoby Myers is a fine flex play depending on who you got. For your Dolphins,
you want Jacoby Myers over Devontae Adams?
No, I didn't say that.
About the same points per game. I mean, it's close. I know. I was told Devontae's an all-pro that needs to be locked in.
Now, who would you want on your Jets next year? I'm just curious.
Devontae Adams. I would like Devontae Adams.
Yeah, yes, you would. You're right, because he's the better receiver and he's a top
But he's
5
going to see
receiver.
Jalen Ramsey all game. If that changes anything.
How old is he now? 30? Like, no,
he looks phenomenal.
Ramsey doesn't worry me in the slightest bit.
Okay.
Who did they face last week? The Packers? No, they didn't face the Packers. Who did the Dolphins face last week? I feel like I didn't see the Dolphins at all on Red Zone last week. They have a bye?
They were on bye.
They were on bye. Who
they played. They played the Chiefs the week beforehand in Germany.
Yeah, Ramsey doesn't worry me. No. For the Dolphins side of things, I think you play everybody: Tua, Tyreek, Waddle, Achane, Mostert. Yeah, that's my fantasy analysis on this game.
Yep, I agree on the Dolphins side. On the Raiders side, Jacobs, of course. I'm obviously not playing Aiden O'Connell. I do hate this spot for Devontae Adams, although I do think you have to play him because of the talent and where you drafted him. But I don't love playing him. For me, I would pivot off of him. I don't think a lot of people are going to, and I don't think there's going to be a lot of buyers on him, but I think he's a must pivot from candidate. He has not scored over 15 fantasy points since week 4. And he has scored under 10. Well, he scored under 9 in 4 of them. So he's had a very rough season as of late. I do think Jimmy G deserves another opportunity at that job, though.
You might. I think the Raiders want a quarterback. I think they're just
tanking.
All right. Giants at the Commanders. Darren Waller said Tuesday he's still kind of in the early phases of his recovery process, not really worried or don't really think about that. Antonio Gibson is doubtful with a toe injury, so more Brian Robinson. I guess you still got to kind of play Saquon, although I don't love it. And then from the Commander side, like I love Brian Robinson. Sam Howell's been a really solid fantasy quarterback, so I think you could play him. We haven't spoken about him a ton on the show on a weekly basis. We did speak about him, I think, on our last live show. Sam Howell's the quarterback 3 on the season.
Yep.
His last 3 games, 32, 18, and 24. He only has 1 game under 10 points and 2 games under 11. So he's a stinker in week 3, and then he had 10 points in week 7. Every other game he's been over 16 fantasy points. So I think you definitely play Sam Howell today against these crappy Giants, and I think you could play Terry McLaurin and maybe even sneak in a Jahan Dotson in your flex if you are in a deeper league.
I agree with that. I don't think it's going to be a very high-scoring game at all, but Sam Howell has been a very big bright spot, I think, for this team. Eric Bieniemy was a master signing for the Commanders.
And he should be the head coach next year.
He deserves a head coaching job, whether it's here or somewhere else.
He should be their head coach next year, not Ron Rivera.
I agree, but we'll see on that. For the Giants, you're only playing Saquon. There's no one else who want to play on that team. For the Commander side of the ball, Terry McLaurin. I think Brian Robinson would be one of my plays of the week. When next season, when we get back to our all booms and all busts, he would definitely be one of those guys that I love in this matchup.
I think we'd be fighting for him on our all boom list.
Yeah.
All right. So Corey Jackson, would you stream Washington's D this week against the Giants? Yep. If you can, do it. The Giants. Giants are the worst offense in the league right now. Like that's what they are.
I have the Ravens, Jets, New Orleans defense in a league. I picked up the Washington just to play them for the week. Like this is a prime matchup. You will always want to play whoever against the Giants for the rest of the year.
Yep. Next up, Dallas Cowboys at the Carolina Panthers. I don't see any like major injury news. I think you're playing Pollard, you're playing CD, you're playing Dak on the Cowboys side of things. I like Jake Ferguson a lot and screaming it from the heavens. A couple people seem to like Brandon Cooks. I just don't. To me, he's just the same player every year, and I want no part of him every year. You might have a differing opinion. For the Panthers side of things, the only play that I think is really feasible is Adam Thielen. No running back I'd want to play. I don't really want to play Thielen if you could avoid it. I think this game's going to be a massacre. I don't say that lightly. I don't know what the spread is, but it's got to be close to like 15.
It's actually only at 10, which is was surprising. And bettors do love the Carolina side of the ball in this matchup. But in my opinion, I do think Adam Thielen is going to have a massive bounce back week. I was
I hope
very
so.
anti-Thielen before the season, but Frank Reich is taking over the play calling again, and
Okay.
when he gave up the play calling, that's when Thielen declined. Now he's taking
Interesting.
it back. So I do think Thielen, rest of season and this week, has a very, very good shot to kind of come through as a league winner, which it looked like he was going to be week 1 and has not looked like it for the last few weeks.
I'm just worried the Cowboys suffocate this team on the morning shows tomorrow. It's how about them Cowboys?
Yeah, and slamming the desk.
Yep. From Mike Duke again, Fryermuth or McKinnon for flex, full PPR. Should I pick up Robert Woods? This is a deep league. I wouldn't pick up Robert Woods. I think I'd maybe lean McKinnon because he does have touchdown upside, but he's the definition of a boom or bust. He'll have 3 or 4 games this year where he'll have like 20, 25 points, and the rest of them are going to be super duper duds. But I think I'd lean McKinnon because I think it's going to be a higher scoring game. And it's a primetime game on Monday night, Super Bowl rematch. Both teams had a bye. I would go with McKinnon.
I agree. I would go
Cool.
McKinnon as well.
Joe says, thoughts on the Texans defense for the playoffs. Who do they have? Let's see. Look at the Texans schedule real quick. My initial thoughts are no, but let's find out who they got.
I'm assuming he's asking because they have a lighter schedule.
They have the Texans, the Browns. They have the Titans, the Browns, and the Titans. Maybe, but I haven't seen the Texans defense really play well. I know we're playing the matchup here, but they're giving up a lot of points. It feels like I know they did shut down Joey B last week. I think he was hurt. The Bucs game was kind of a shootout. Yeah, I don't love it. I feel like you might be able to get more trustable matchups, and I think the Texans hype might die down in the next 5 or 6 weeks. It's just they're going from like the worst team in the league to now being a playoff team. I know it's possible, and I think they're being coached very well. I think Stroud's playing very well, but I'm intrigued till the next 2 weeks go, and I wouldn't rush to pick them up on your waiver wire just yet to stash them.
I do think that they sneak into the playoffs. But for me, like, I agree with Nick. I don't love I don't love the idea of them going from the worst defense and the worst offense in football all the way now to being seen as a top 10 team across the league. Because of in what it's been a 3-week stretch. We would not be having this conversation if they did not get that comeback win against the Bucs, or if they did not get that comeback win against the Bengals. If they blew the game last week, it would have been same old Texans. That would have been the conversation.
Right.
If they lost to the Bucs, it would have been same old Texans. So, and in the last 2 games, they've allowed 37 and 27. So,
yeah,
I know they got the pick to help out, but I don't know if I'm comfortable locking them in. I do want to see where the next few weeks go. I would not go pick them up and stash them on your bench for now. I don't think people are going to be rushing for that Texans ad.
I think Arizona's going to beat them today. I'm standing by that statement. I think they beat them today. Okay, so from Nathan H, pick 2: Waddle, Tank Dell, or Rashee Rice in standard. So we're looking for touchdown upside. Waddle and Dell. Rashee Rice is a Chiefs wide receiver, and that's fine, but I think they just spread the ball around too much. Waddle's a guy I think you do have to start almost every week unless you have a really good option. And Tank Dell seems to be Stroud's maybe favorite target. So I think you have to go with those 2.
I agree with Nick.
From our guy Deshaun is with us every single week, 12-man, half PPR, start Darrell Henderson or Tajay Spears for Taylor's bye. Start Henderson because Kyron's not playing.
I agree with that.
Cool. Next game, we got the Titans at the Jags. I think I have to play Tajay Spears in our league, actually. Am I? No, I'm playing. Yeah, I have to flex Tajay Spears in our league. Like, I mean, I'll read off my you lucked out, my friend. You really did.
Stop that.
You did.
No. Nick, what did you say to start the episode when we talked about our matchup? I've been number 1 in points since week 1.
Yes.
I have also been number 1 in points against since week 2.
Yes, but I'm not talking with the last 11 weeks. I'm talking this week. You have lucked out with me having to play Tajay Spears in a flex.
My team defense is awful. You're going to score 160 points against me.
I hope so, but I do not think so. I mean, and like the thing is, I can't even really there's nobody I can really drop. I don't really want to. I mean, I could have dropped Justice Hill. It's who I should have dropped. I don't want to drop Demario Douglas. I want to play the Pats D next week. I can't drop Olave. Can't drop Taylor. Don't want to drop Stafford because I want to have a backup. There's really nobody I could even drop if I wanted to play a different player. And I guess I could drop Tajay Spears if I really wanted to, but I'm intrigued at his keeper opportunity, so I don't really want to drop him. So I'm now stuck with what I got, for the week, unless I really wanted to drop the Patriots defense. So, all right, Titans at Jags. I mean, I'd still play Derrick Henry for your Jags. I mean, I might even say pivot off of Trevor if you can. Christian Kirk's been pretty solid. ETN's been awesome, but that's all I really want to play. Trevor hasn't shown me that he should be a starter on my fantasy team. And if you had Sam Howell as your backup, he should be your starter right now over Trevor Lawrence.
I agree with that. I think Sam Howell should be the starter over plenty of fantasy quarterbacks.
Right. That's just the name that I'm throwing out.
Yeah, I agree. I do think Trevor needs to be benched everywhere, though. That I agree with. I've started him every single week in one league, and I've totally pivoted now that Kyler's back. Not even going to look back, I don't think, for the rest of
it. Question from Nathan again. Kyler Murray or Justin Fields? I like this question. I do.
I've been debating this.
I think I lean Kyler Murray. I liked what I saw from him last week in his first game back from, was it an ACL or an ACL, right? It was an ACL or was it Achilles? It was ACL. First game back, I think he looked pretty good. He was mobile. He won them the game. I think he looked good. Now, I don't trust the Texans defense, and I don't love the Lions defense either, but the Bears O-line is horrible. So Fields could be under pressure all day, and Fields looked disappointing this year. So just for them seeing from one game from Kyler, and you got to remember, when Kyler's healthy, he's been drafted as a top 3 to 5 fantasy quarterback every single year. So what are we doing right now? I know he's coming off the injury, but from what we saw last week, he looks healthy. And the Cardinals are a team that does not need to win games. So if he wasn't healthy, I don't see him trotting out there. I'm kind of all in on Kyler Murray right now. And if you picked him off of waivers or drafted him and stashed him, I think you're kind of winning the sweepstakes at this point. And he could be a league winner as well.
Now, I think the debate is you have two very good options that are worth playing.
Correct.
Which is always a good thing. So I will preface this by saying, if we are wrong, just know we both thought that both would be good plays, but I do side with Nick here. I think both of them are playing for their careers and for their jobs. But I do think Kyler Murray and that offense look a lot better, and they're in the better matchup. Non-division, cross conference, which usually are higher scoring games. You don't game plan against these teams. Often you don't see a lot of their footage. I forget who was talking about this. It was on one of the shows, but I think it had to do more with Lamar Jackson, that he has such a phenomenal record against the NFC. I believe he's 19-1 in his career against the NFC. And it's because A, you do not get to game plan for him. B, you don't get to play him multiple times a year, or, the only teams that have played him multiple times have like a 3 or 4 year stretch between them. And C, because you're cross conference, you're not watching footage of the Ravens playing anybody else. So when you see a team like the Texans, they're never going to have to prepare for Kyler Murray. I know DeMeco Ryans, I believe he comes from the 49ers defense. So there is that aspect to it where he probably knows Kyler a little bit better, but the rest of that team and the rest of that personnel is going to have a very hard time preparing for him. Dan Campbell has seen Justin Fields for 2 years now. He's going to know what to do against him.
All right. Next question. And I do want to say this as well. Trust your gut. If me and Nick both like players and we'll start giving you our opinion, trust your gut. If you go against us, we won't, we're not going to, hurt you for that. From Joe Foco, Kate Otten or Donald Parham. We spoke about it a little bit earlier. I like Donald Parham. I think they like him as well. Herbert does like targeting the tight ends. Garrett Leverett has been a viable tight end play. And without Mike Williams, without Joshua Palmer, Quentin Johnson hasn't had that breakout game yet. Guyton hasn't had his as either. So I think the safer play here is Parham. I think he has more red zone upside. And we haven't really mentioned this on the show because we haven't gotten many Bucs questions, but the Bucs have the 49ers who just obliterated the Jags. I don't really feel comfortable playing any Buccaneer this week if you could avoid it. Maybe Mike Evans, because he's Mike Evans, but he's good for a couple stinkers this year. Every year as well. So if you could avoid playing your Bucks, I personally would.
I agree with that. I don't like this spot against the 49ers for the Buccaneers. Traveling from Tampa Bay all the way up to San Francisco. That's a 3,000-mile flight, about 6 hours. That is not going to be an enjoyable game for Tampa Bay. And I feel awful because you are going into a game where you're a 2-touchdown underdog on a 3,000-mile, 6-hour flight just to get absolutely mollywopped by the best team in football.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Joe, for that. We appreciate you joining the show and asking us a question. From Deshaun, we love this question every single week. In a 16-man league, it's PPR. Start Justice. Well, you can't start Justice Hill, so we're going to take him out. Ty Chandler, Khalil Herbert, Dante Foreman, Jameson Williams. So you can only start one. I would do either Bears running back, whichever one you trust more. I personally trust Dante Foreman more. I think he's emerged as a back you can kind of trust. He's the bigger back, more red zone upside, more touchdown upside. So I would go with Foreman here. But if you chose Herbert, I wouldn't fault you for it.
I would go with Jameson Williams. I've loved him since he came out, and I know he's had a couple of issues to not be able to get on the field, but he is a very talented receiver that they took in the first round of the draft. And out of this list, Ty Chandler, I do not trust to get touches. Khalil Herbert and Foreman both will get touches, but it is a game where they are going to probably be playing from behind very early on. And I do think Justin Fields has more of the explosiveness out of the backfield between the three of them. If I saw 1 or 2 more weeks where I knew, all right, Herbert's getting 60% of the snap share, Foreman's getting 40 or vice versa, I'd feel more comfortable going either way. But Jameson Williams against that awful Bears defense has just as much touchdown upside, if not more, than everyone on this list, and has the explosiveness for the one catch make your week, where I don't think anyone else on this list has that upside.
All right. Guys, keep asking those questions until the show is over. Remember, the live show is every Sunday, 9 o'clock Eastern Time, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. If you're watching us right now on YouTube or Facebook, please drop a like. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. We'd appreciate that. Hit the little bell icon to get notifications every time we go live and every time we drop a video, whether it's our live show on Sundays or our weekly show as well. Next matchup here, Cardinals at Texans. We talked about this one in length pretty much. Damian Pierce has an ankle injury and has been ruled out. Noah Brown is questionable with a knee injury, but he should play. Plays in this game, we both really like Kyler Murray. I think I like Connor a bit more than you do, but I like Connor. I think Trey McBride's a fine play, and I think Hollywood Brown's a good play. On the Texans side of things, Stroud's a lock it. Anyway, you lock him in your lineup. I like Tank Dell a lot. I think Noah Brown's an okay flex play. I think you could flirt with Singletary in a running back 2 slot. And I think you could also play Dalton Schultz in your tight end slot as well.
I want to play everybody from this game. I agree with Nick. I echo everything he said. I love the quarterbacks. I love multiple receivers on both teams. I love the running back for both teams. I like the tight end for both teams. I mean, this is kind of – it sucks because it's like, this is probably a matchup of 2 teams before the year where you were like, ugh, this is the game you have circled for. It should be a blowout for our team. Like if you're a Cardinals fan, you think, all right, that's the win we're going to get. The Texans fans, that's the win we're going to get. I know as a Jets fan, I circle these 2 teams if I ever see them on my schedule and say that's a win. But I think this game is going to be very competitive. I think it's going to be very high scoring, as the last 2 Texans games have been. I believe the over-under is close to 50 in this game, so they're expecting a shootout as well. So we'll see what happens. I think it's a shootout. I like a lot of the players, like Nick said. And honestly, I think it has a very good chance to be game of the week.
All right. Bucks at the San Francisco 49ers. No injuries to report. On your Bucks side, like I just stated, I would bench every Buck. If you could bench Mike Evans, I'd probably bench him too. And on the 49ers side, you're just playing your 49ers. It's a very simple game for me.
I play all the 49ers. I agree. I do think I would play my Bucks. At least the
all of them,
and maybe not Rashad White. I know he's been on a hot streak, so it's hard to bench him. But that San Fran defense has been one of the worst in the league for the secondary. They're allowing, I think, the 8th, 9th most points per game to the wide receiver position. So they have not had the back end that they have had, and the pass rush has not been as great. I mean, listen, I do think that they're going to absolutely curb stomp the Buccaneers this week, but Mike Evans has been one of the best receivers in fantasy football. Godwin gets a ton of workload, so you're checking a lot of boxes for the 6 minutes left in the game. The starters for the Niners are benched, and there's 2 touchdowns scored by the Buccaneers. Like, I think at the end of the game, you're going to look at the Bucs and say, all right, like, the fantasy production was good. The team should not feel great about how it went, though.
Yep, I agree with that. Okay. Got some questions. We love questions. From the Sean, 12-man PPR start at flex. Jahan Dotson, Trey McBride, Gabe Davis, Jerry Jeudy can only start one. I like it. I'll make a case for all of them at this point. Jahan Dotson has a great match against the Giants. So I'll do a 0.4 point again. So my 0.4 Dotson, great match against the Giants. Maybe the worst defense in the league at this point. Commanders should put up a lot of points. On the flip side, though, Commanders put up a lot of points. Maybe they should just start running the ball a lot. For Trey McBride, he's been very, very productive this season as a rookie tight end. He was Kyler Murray's favorite target last week. Negative side to that is I think Hollywood Brown needs to get his at some point, and McBride may not have back-to-back big boom games. For Gabe Davis, tough matchup against Knicks Jets, one of the best secondaries in the league, best corner duo in the league. But I don't think Sauce will be on him, so I think they can move Gabe Davis around. And I think the Bills need a big bounce back statement win. This is the 4:00 slot. I think a lot of America is going to get this game. I think it's a game that the Bills have to win. And if they want to pretend like they're contenders, I think they have to win it convincingly against a team. I don't think that the Jets, talent-wise, especially in offense, like even come close. So I think that although it's a tough matchup for Buffalo, from a football standpoint of me being a football fan, if the Bills go in there and they win by 3 points or they lose, I'm saying to myself, well, they're still the frauds that I thought they were. But if they go in there and win by 10, 15 plus, I'm going to say, you know what? Maybe they can make some noise. And as for Jerry Jeudy, I think he's the most talented receiver on that team. I think he has a great matchup against a very bad Minnesota defense. So those are my plus points. My minus points are he hasn't been consistent. Russ has been spreading the ball around, and Courtland Sutton seems to be his favorite target. So if you ask me who I actually play, I think your safest pick is actually McBride, knowing what he's done this season and with Kyler Murray last week. But I think if you want like a boom or bust, I think I'd go with Jahan Dotson. He has the best matchup. Sam Howell's looked good. Gabe Davis and Jeudy could have tougher matchups. And Judy's also might face Patrick Surtain a couple of routes. But I would go Jahan Dotson if you want boom bust. If you want a safer play, McBride.
I think that's a fair take on the team, on the players. The one that I hate from this list is Gabe Davis. In week 1 when they played, Sauce covered Gabe a lot more than he probably should have. And he only had 2 catches for 30 yards, Gabe Davis, across the entire game, and neither were against Sauce. I'm taking a look back because I want to see what Dotson did against the Giants the first time they met. They only scored 7 points, and he had 5 for 43, which isn't great. But, I mean, Jerry Jeudy has not been much more explosive than that. McBride's had 2 massive weeks, and he's had some pretty low weeks. So I agree with Nick. I'd probably say McBride is the safest play. But in a 12-man league, we don't like safe. We like explosive. And I agree with Nick. Dotson's the most likely to get you the touchdown 100-yard game from anybody on this list.
All right. Next question from Corey Jackson. When does Donovan Peoples-Jones come into this talk? Are his injuries a big question for his performance moving forward? I'll be blunt. He doesn't come into this talk. I don't think on the depth chart, he's behind Amari Cooper. I think he's behind Elijah Moore now.
Oh, he's not there anymore. I believe he's
where is he now?
Where
did he go?
I think he's in Detroit. Let me double
I still
check.
thought he was with Cleveland. That just shows how irrelevant he's going to be.
He is for Detroit, and as of right now, he is more of a special teams guy, apparently.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's almost the same conversation with Cleveland. He doesn't have a role. Amon-Ra's number 1, Laporta's number 2, and they still have like Jamison Williams, and they have one other target that they like.
They have the running backs.
Raymond. They have the 2 running backs. He's never going to be in the conversation for me at this point because he's just not. If you're not a wide receiver 2 on your team, or even the 3rd option, I can't have you as a fantasy option unless I'm in a 32-person league. So unfortunately, if you like him, that's cool, but he's not in my conversation at least.
I agree with that. I have always thought he was a solid player last
I
year.
thought
He
so
was very-
too, and I thought he was
He
solid
was, he
last
was
year.
really consistent with Cleveland, and then they brought in Elijah Moore this year.
Yeah.
Kind of took him. I was very surprised when they let him go at the start.
And Detroit's probably not the best option for him. I think your Jets would have been a better option because you guys don't have another target outside of Garrett Wilson. So
I agree with that. I think he would have been. I think that was a poor place for him to land.
I think there's other choices where I think there's other places where he could have gone. I don't think Dallas. I mean, Brandon Cooks is okay, but I think Dallas could have used him maybe. I think there's other places that probably could have. Like Kansas City, they don't have. I mean, they have a slew of receivers, but I'm just saying, I think there's better places where he could have been.
I agree. I agree with you.
From Andy Weddle, 10-man PPR, over rostered. Who do I drop? Kyler Murray, CJ Stroud, Travis Etienne, Isaiah Pacheco, Aaron Jones, James Conner, CeeDee Lamb, Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, Michael Pittman, Marquise Brown, Tank Dell, Travis Kelce, Trey McBride. I feel like one Cardinal has to go. I feel like nobody has to go. Like, why are you dropping somebody? Is it because of a bye? I would love to see like screenshots of your team per se, but I would love to know why you have to drop somebody. Is this your bench too? Because I don't want to drop anybody. They're all super talented. If you put a gun to my head and said you had to drop somebody, I guess I'd go with McBride because you had Kelce. You don't need a backup tight end. But Connor was on IR. Is this your bench too? Like, is this really your team? Because this is just so stacked. Like, there's nobody. You can't drop any of your running backs because you definitely need them. Then you're sitting there with CeeDee Lamb. I mean, if you still have your trade deadline, like definitely make a trade. I just wouldn't drop anybody. I really wouldn't want to.
I agree with Nick. Make a trade. Make an overwhelmingly phenomenal trade that someone can't say no to for a superstar player.
Yep.
Go package Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones and go try and get Justin Jefferson.
McCaffrey or something like that.
Like, go just get a superstar stud and then take Connor off of your IR. You do not need to play him this week, so you cannot adjust your lineup, and still I think you can still make a trade offer. So
yep.
And if it's a 2-for-1, then you can move Connor to your bench right
Yep.
after.
And if your trade deadline is passed and you really have to drop somebody, I would either drop McBride or Tank Dell. If you really want to keep.
Oh no, I disagree.
What receiver would you drop? Marquise Brown.
I would drop Marquise Brown. I think Tank Dell has been one of the most explosive young receivers in the league.
That's fair. But yeah, that's really tough. I would try to make a trade if you still can. If not, drop one of the Cardinals.
Okay.
Ball Glove Blueprint. Thanks for joining us every week. We appreciate you. In PPR, I've got A-Chain starting at running back. Who do I flex? Mostert, Brian Robinson, or Calvin Ridley? So my initial thoughts are I don't want to start A-Chain. I want to start Mostert and I want to start Brian Robinson. I don't know how Nick's going to fare on this because he likes A-Chain, but we both love Brian Robinson. So out of all these guys, my number one play is Brian Robinson. And then I would decide whichever Dolphins running back you want to play and pivot from Calvin Ridley. I personally would start Mostert. I think he's the running back 3 on the season in PPR. I'm going to double check that for you. Right now he's the running back. Yeah, he's the running back 2. Achane still's coming back from the injury, so I would play Robinson and Mostert. And if Achane does go off, then I think you just say, well, if I have a good option for the rest of the season, and you take that little L.
I would start Achane and Mostert.
Interesting.
I would have no problem doubling down in a game where you're a 2-touchdown favorite.
But I thought you loved Brian Robinson. I thought he would have been your play of the week.
I do love Brian Robinson, but I think that between the two of Achane and Mostert, there's going to be a guaranteed 40 to 50 points between the two of them in this matchup.
Okay.
And for that alone, I would not want to play Achane and Mostert gets the 40, or I would not want to play Mostert and Achane gets the 40. So I would rather double down, expect the two of them to go nuts and call it a day. I think Brian Robinson is a very good play. I would like to know who your other running back is.
It's got to be somebody really good at this point.
Of course, yeah.
But. Okay, so next game, we have the Jets at the Bills. Garrett Wilson has a little bit of an elbow injury, but he plans to play. That's the only injury news that we got here. So from your Jets, for me, every week it's Garrett Wilson reluctantly. He's actually been much better than than what I would thought if you look at the stats, but that's fantasy. And Breece Hall, that's my Jets take for every week. For your Bills, I mean, I think you're playing Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, and there's nobody else I really want to play. I mean, maybe James Cook, since the position's thin, I have to play him in a league, but that's all I really want to play on the Bills.
I agree. I think it's Diggs and Allen for me. Kincaid, I think, has been very solid, so I would have no problem slotting him in this matchup. Although the Jets have had the two best linebackers in football, they would be both all pros this year.
So is other running backs Breece Hall, Brian Robinson or Breece Hall? I think I want to get Brian Robinson in there. Like I don't want to crap on Nick's Jets, but the quarterback, the quarterback, low scoring game, and I think the Bills have to make a statement. If they don't today, they are such frauds. And I'm not saying that because like the Jets defense is very good, but the offense is putrid. I just think if the Bills are going to sit here and try to make it seem like they're going to compete with the Chiefs this year in the AFC Championship game, no Bengals, they need to beat the Jets. They need to beat the Jets, and they need to show some. As good as the Jets defense is, they need to show that the offense is their strong suit. And do I think they're good? Would I bet money on that? No, but my point being, the Bills really need to win this game, and the Commanders are definitely going to win their game. I think I would play Brian Robinson, and if Nick really wants to play those two Dolphins, I would play Brian Robinson and the two Dolphins. I'm kind of speaking for Nick, but I'll let him give his take. But my personal choice between the three is I would go, if I'm ranking them, I would go Brian Robinson 1, Mostert 2, Breece 3, and Achane 4.
Wow.
He's coming off an injury. He's a rookie, and Mostert's the running back too. This isn't McCaffrey coming off an injury. It's a rookie.
I would go Breece Hall number 1. Over the last 5 games, he's averaging 17 points per game. Over the course of the year, he's averaging 14 points per game, the same amount as Brian Robinson, who has not seen his bye week yet. Over the last 5 games with the 17, Brian's averaging about 13, 14. So they're both around the same range. In week 1 against Buffalo, his first game back from the injury, he put up 16 fantasy points as well. So for me, Breece Hall, even as a biased Jets fan, my non-biased take is Breece Hall, rest of season, I'm going to guess on most platforms, is probably ranked as a top 5 running back for the rest of the way. So for me, I'm not pivoting off of that. And then I would really like that Dolphins duo. I think, if we were talking about a tougher matchup, that would not be my statement, but they're going up against an overhyped Raiders team after 2 lackluster, undeserved wins. And we're talking about a Jets, a Dolphins running back room that earlier this season, the two of them combined for 90 points in a game. Like, it's so hard for me to pivot off of that take because that upside, like you always feared with Zeke and Pollard, one of them cannot have the explosive game. You always feared with Ingram and Kamara, like they could both be solid, but are they really going to combine for over 50 between the two of them? They already proved that they could get close to 100 in a game where it was a blowout. So for me, I have no problem starting the two of them, expecting that the low end of the combined score is going to be 30 because one of them is going to go nuts. And the other one should be very good as well. Like for me, I think that Dolphins duo is deadly. And I think if you had to play them rest of the season, I don't think I'd be scared if it were any other running back duo. Like Gibbs and Montgomery would probably be the only other one where I think they could both be solid week to week. There's no other duo where both players have the upside of a 40-point game any single week.
I think the only reason I disagree with Nick's point is coming off the injury and coming off the IR. Mike McDaniel has proven to be a little more careful with injuries. And if there are going to be, if they want to try to be a contender, I don't see them rushing the rookie out there to get a good chunk of carries. I think we're banking on him scoring or having a long run. So I don't hate Nick's take, but I think if he was 2 or 3 weeks removed from the injury, I'd feel different. And the other thing is you have really solid options beside that. So I think that's what's really stopping me from really going all in on it, even if I do understand where Nick's coming from. And the rest of the season, I think they will be very productive, and that's good for you.
Yeah.
Seahawks at the Rams. Tyler Lockett is truly questionable with a hamstring injury. I know we talked about Lockett earlier, but hammies do worry me. But if he's playing, he's playing. Stafford's coming back from a thumb sprain. and Stafford has played well against your my Seahawks. So for the Seahawks, I would love to bench Geno Smith if you could. If you had Stafford and Geno, I'd play Stafford. Lockett, I'm okay with playing. DK, I'm okay with playing. Kenneth Walker, I think you just play every week. From the Rams side of things, you're playing Stafford. You're playing Cooper Kupp. I think you can play Puka, and you might be able to play with Darrell Henderson a bit too if you need a running back.
I agree with that. I think you nailed literally everybody in that game.
All right, 2 more games to talk about, guys. So get your questions in before we get out of here. Sunday Night Football, Vikings at the Broncos. Justin Jefferson is still not activated off of the IR. As for Alexander Mattison, he suffered a concussion. Let's see. If he is fully clear, then he will be eligible to play Sunday. I think he did. Did he pass concussion protocol yet? I'm not sure. No, he didn't. So watch out for Alexander Mattison. If you plan on playing Mattison in a league, make sure you have a running back you could slot in, whether it's the backup for the Vikings or maybe Jerick McKinnon tomorrow night. So just in case he doesn't play, make sure you have a backup. But for me, for the Vikings, I can flex Jordan Addison. You're definitely playing TJ Hawkinson. And if Madison plays, I'll play him. For the Broncos, Russ has looked great, so you'll play Russ and maybe one of the receivers if you need to, but it's tough to kind of figure out. And maybe Javonte. Well, you probably have to play Javonte Williams just based on the running back position.
Nick, how are you not going to mention my guy Cortland Sutton?
I said I lumped in the Broncos receivers together.
You can't lump him in. He's been phenomenal this year.
He's been okay. I wouldn't say phenomenal.
He's the wide receiver 24. He's ranking above guys like Devontae Smith, Tank Dell, Hollywood Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, Gabe Davis, Zay Flowers, Jalen Waddle, George Pickens, just to name a few.
Yep. I mean, it's a little bit of an outlier, but yeah.
Well, I don't know because he's only had one game under 11 fantasy points all year, and he's played every single game. So for me, he's been
Was it you who compared him to DJ Moore last week?
Yes.
Yeah, he's DJ Moore.
He's putting
DJ
Moore stat line.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm loving it. I think he's been great. I think over the last 4 games, he's averaging about 16 fantasy points per game. He's averaging 13.5 over the course of the season. The touchdowns have been the low number, and we always talk about wide receiver rankings. If we were with how close they are at the top of the ladder, there is a massive gap. Like it's Tyreek Hill, then there's 20 points between him and Keenan Allen. The gap from the wide receiver 1 to the wide receiver 6 is 50 fantasy points. For Cortland Sutton, if Cortland Sutton scored 2 more touchdowns this year, scored 12 more fantasy points, he jumps all the way up to the wide receiver 16 in fantasy. So for me, he's been phenomenally solid. He has not been as explosive because the team's not as explosive. But the Vikings don't have a great defense. They've been better this year than I think people expected, but this is not the best game for them. I think Cortland Sutton has a very good matchup here. And with those consistency numbers, there is no reason to take him out of your starting lineup.
Okay. I like to take from Bear Boy. I think I'm saying that right. Puka Nacua, Tank Dell, or Saquon Barkley. I'm guessing this is PPR. Man, it's just...
That's a tough one.
I really don't want to bench Saquon. What has he been doing these last few weeks? I got to look. 13, 18, 15, 14, 7 last week. They had the Cowboys, who are a tough defense. The Commanders don't have a tough defense. I think you still have to kind of play Saquon. But if you want a guy who's more boomer bust, play Puka or Dell. So if you want boomer bust, I'd probably go Dell. If you want a safe play, I think I'd go Saquon.
Oh, I'd go Puka. I don't think there's a reason not to play Puka.
I think the reason why I not play Puka is because Cooper Kupp is just going to have a Cooper Kupp game. And Puka will have a good game too, but Dell could be the wide receiver 1 over there. I think Dell has a chance to go for 10, 140, and 1, whereas Puka, I feel like his ceiling is 580.
I think I got to call you out, Nick. I think I'm going to call you out real quick because I think about 10 minutes ago, you told somebody that Puka Nacua was not Puka. Tank Dell was the most cuttable player from the roster, and now you're saying that he should be played over Saquon Barkley and Puka Nacua.
You're talking rest of the season. I don't think that's fair. His roster was sick. His roster was a fantasy juggernaut.
It was a very good roster.
And I think it's him or Marquise Brown where I would have cut if I was cutting a receiver.
I would play Puka off a bye, averaging 17.5 fantasy points per game.
Okay. You play him over Saquon too?
Yes.
He says he also has Monty and Aaron Jones. I don't know if he's playing them, but Is this a 10-man league, 8-man league? Like, what are we working with here? Because your roster's pretty sick.
No, this is a realistic team because think about where they're drafted or they're.
You're right. You could have gotten, you're right. You could have gotten Puka and Dell later in the draft. You're right. Monty and yeah, you're right. I would love to see this roster. This is pretty good. Okay. Last game of the week, which is a Monday night game. We'll preview it now anyway. Dallas Goedert is still going to be out with his forearm injury. I thought he broke it or something, but he's still going to be out.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's a bad strain. No other injuries in this one. I call this the play everybody game. I mean, Hurts, Swift, both receivers, and then on the Chiefs side, Kelsey, Mahomes, Pacheco, maybe even a receiver. Like this should be a pretty. It's an 8-man normal lineup. Okay, cool. So yeah, pretty good game here on Monday night. I think you just play them all and enjoy the football game.
Yep. I pretty much agree, and I'm struggling in one league because I want to get Rashee Rice in there, but my receiving core is very deep, and the Eagles have the worst rated secondary across the entire season. They've allowed the most fantasy points to the receiver position. They are coming off a bye. It's possible they figure stuff out, but Patrick Mahomes knows how to tear up a secondary. I expect those Chiefs receivers to play very good games. But again, it's your pick of the litter. You do not know which one will explode. But to me, Rashee Rice is the most talented guy on that team.
Yep. Alrighty, guys. So that is our show. If you have any other last-minute questions, drop them in now while I'm giving you plugs. If you're watching the show live on YouTube or Facebook, make sure you drop a like. We'd appreciate that. You can find our live shows every Sunday, 9 o'clock Eastern time on our YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter channels. For YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. Hit the little notification guide, the little bell, so you kind of know when we go live. You get notifications for that. Share the links with your friends. Share the channel with your friends. We really appreciate that. We do a podcast every single week. It goes on all audio streaming platforms, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, and Anchor. If you're on iTunes or Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. That show also goes up on YouTube in a video and audio format. So again, if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, if you hit the little bell guy, you will get notifications every time that episode that is weekly is dropped. Please follow us and interact with us on social media, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, PrimeTimeFFPod, Facebook, and YouTube is PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. Twitter is the best place to get your weekly questions in. If we do miss you after this, if we don't get you on a live show, we get you on Twitter after. If you have questions throughout the week, we get answered those on our Twitter as well. Thanks again for joining, guys. Thank you for the questions. You really make us have a lot of fun on Sunday mornings. And best of luck in week 11. And we'll talk to you guys very soon.